Hi, welcome to this short tutorial on how to use Affinity Photo to edit RAW files. What you see at the moment is the Affinity main screen as it appears when you open the program, and at the top here you'll see several headings. One says vector, and that's for drawing graphics, so if you're doing posters and things like that, that's very useful for that. Pixel is where we're going to be, which is for dealing with photographs. Layout is for dealing with publications, newsletters, that sort of thing. So overall, it's a very useful program, but we're going to concentrate on Pixel for now. And so the first thing we're going to need to do is to open a RAW file. So if we go up to File and we go Open, we can then use our file manager to navigate to whatever it is we want. So in this particular case, I'm using a Mac computer to record this, so menus will be slightly different if you've got a PC, but they're essentially the same. So here's my RAW file here, so I'm going to open that and it will come in here ready to go. So what you will notice is that straight away the top left menu has changed and we've got Develop up here. So we're effectively in the Develop module here. And over on the right hand side, you've got these tools here where we can start adjusting our image. Now, we're only going to do basic adjustments, but I think you'll see that there's a huge amount we can do with basic adjustments. So in the way I normally work is I will crop first, mainly so I'm not distracted by things that I'm ultimately going to throw away in an image. So to do that in Canva Affinity, you click on the crop tool over here and you will get the crop tool appear, as you can see, but it's also got a rule of thirds grid superimposed on it. Now you can change this grid if you don't want rule of thirds. If you look up here, you can see there's all sorts of other wonderful systems for cropping a picture. To be honest, I'm just going to use rule of thirds because it works quite well with this particular image. So we can just crop it like that, puts her on the third nicely. And if you hit return, it completes the crop, and there we are. So now we can just concentrate on the main part of the image without being distracted, as I say, by things that we're ultimately going to throw away. So I took this shot in Cambodia back in March. I was walking out for dinner in the evening, and this lovely lady was there giving me big smiles. So I thought, that's a photo opportunity. And I grabbed the shot, which is why it wasn't composed terribly well and why I was a bit sloppy on my exposure. But I knew that it was under control enough that I could recover it, which is what we're going to do now. So when you look at this, you can see it's a bit dim, all a bit dull. And when you look at the histogram, which gives us a clue as to how the exposure is going, you'll see everything's piled up to the left and there's quite a gap on the right, which is the classic sign that it's underexposed. And so the first control we've got here is the exposure control, so which is quite convenient. And in fact, all these controls down here are listed in the order that you should use them, okay, or the order that the software house suggests you should use them. You don't have to stick to it, but I recommend you do for the initial adjustments, because otherwise, if you just dart around to things, you'll find that the controls start fighting against each other and you can get in a pickle quite easily. So first things first, we need to get the exposure right. So we just click and hold on the little dot on the slider and we can turn it up. And somewhere around about there looks right. So it's about 1.5 stops, as you can see by the number on the right. Brings it up to the sort of level it should have been at in the first place. It's still not right, but if you look at the histogram, you'll see that it's much more balanced now. And if you watch the histogram while I do this, you will see what it does. It just spreads it out. And about 1.5 stops is where the histogram looks quite nice and even. There's a few little bits going at the right-hand side, but that's these very, very bright bits over here. And we can't do anything about that. If we were to adjust the exposure for those to look okay like that, then everything else would be too dark. So we have to compromise sometimes, and that's what I'm doing here. So here we go. So that's about the right exposure. And the next control here is the black point. which, as its name suggests, controls which bits are black. In some editing programs, it's literally just called blacks. So if I move it to the right, it makes the blacks blacker. And obviously you can go too far and it makes the right mess. If on any of these controls you want to get back to the default setting, just double click on the control and it will return to its default setting. So in this case, we just want to add a little bit of black in. Just gives it a little bit more, the image a little bit more punch. So that's that. I'm only going to add a touch of brightness now, not very much. And then we move down and we've got contrast. Now, we need a little bit of extra contrast here. And if you remember, the contrast makes the blacks blacker and the whites whiter. So it expands or compresses the histogram. So I'm going to add a bit of contrast. Just makes everything a bit snappier. And now the next two are quite useful. Normally, we wouldn't add a lot of clarity or texture. So clarity works with the midtones. So it increases the contrast, but only of the midtones. And the texture works on the finest detail. It sort of sharpens up the finest detail in the image. So it can be helpful if you've just missed focus. But what I recommend you do when you're adjusting both of these controls is to zoom in on important parts of the image. So in this case, this image is all about her face, really. So if you press and hold the Alt or Command key and rotate the mouse wheel, you can zoom in to wherever your mouse happens to be at the moment. Okay, which is what I've done there. So if you look at her face, you will see that I've missed focus slightly. We all do it from time to time. And in this case, my excuse was I was using a manual focus lens. So I got close, but not good enough. And it was a grab shot. But we can help with that. So if we look at how the clarity and texture work, let's just try moving them and see what happens. So if we increase the clarity, you can see what it does to the skin. It makes the skin go horrid. So we only ever want to use a little bit of clarity. But interestingly, if you go the other way with clarity and reduce the clarity, go into negative clarity, can you see what it's done to our skin tones? It's really smoothed things out. So it's made the image look a little bit more out of focus, but it's actually made her skin tones much nicer. So what I could do is take that down about there to soften her skin tones and the skin texture. And now if I wind up the texture a little bit, see what it does to the detail. So I can wind up the texture and make the image look sharper again. So now just by playing with these two controls, I've got it looking as though it was actually in focus, though it was slightly out. And we've improved her skin tone somewhat. So those are two useful controls, but I always recommend you zoom in to use them. Otherwise, you might find that you don't spot some of the bad things that you do with this. So to zoom out again, just press and hold the Command or Alt key and zoom out to see the full image. And you'll see that it's actually looking a lot nicer. Now you can see I can drag the image around here. That's because my cursor's turned into a hand, as you can see. And that means when you click on it, you can grab the image and move it around. It's very useful for when you want to zoom in on an image and just get it in the right position. If you're not seeing the hand, if you press and hold the space key, the hand will appear and then you can drag it. So that's looking a lot better now. So we've done the texture. We now got saturation and vibrance we can play with here, which is all about making the colours pop a little bit more. I don't think we need very much, if anything, here. Next on the list is the white balance, and this is really useful for correcting colour casts and colour problems, essentially caused by local lighting. So in this case, it's not too bad, but very often when people are lit under fluorescent lights or LED lighting, you get some strange colour casts that you need to work on. And this is where you can do that. So if you move the slider to the right, it gets warmer, more orangey tones. If you move it to the left, it gets cooler. If I just show you, so if I move that to the left, you can see, now, what you can see now is absolutely nothing's happening at all. And the reason for that is I haven't ticked this little box here with the blue tick. That applies to all these boxes here and all these controls. If you haven't ticked the little blue box, then they do nothing. So watch out for that. If you appear to be moving the sliders and nothing's happened, that's why. So now if we move it to the left, you can see it all goes rather blue. We move it to the right, it all goes way too much warmth. So what we could do is add just a little bit of warmth to that, which looks quite nice, like that. And we don't need the tint. The tint can be very useful if you've got some odd colour casts in there that you're struggling to deal with. So the final couple of controls we're going to look at is shadows and highlights. So shadows deals with the shadowy parts of the image and gives the opportunity to brighten or darken them. And the highlights deals with the very brightest parts in the image. So in this case, it will be these lights up here and this white blob down here. Now, I would reduce those whites down, particularly around her face, because they're a bit distracted. I find if I do like that, you see what it does to the rest of the image? It rather spoils it. So I'm not going to bother in this case. I'm just going to take it down a little tiny bit, leave it at that. The shadows, we don't need the shadows. It just makes it go weaker if we increase the shadows. So that's, overall, that's looking okay. I think we've pretty much finished now. If you want to see a before and after of your adjustments, you can go up here. And if you click this middle button up here, it gives you a split screen slider that you can move about, where everything on the left is after adjustment and everything on the right is before adjustment. So you can see in this case we've made a huge difference, mainly because of the exposure and the brightness. So there we are. So that's our image finished. So what we now need to do is save all these adjustments. And the way to do that is you have to click the develop button up here. And what this does, this builds all these adjustments into the file. So you want to make sure you finish with these adjustments before you do that. And then you hit the develop button, and there we go. It's going to apply it. And there's our final image. And if we go up here to save, it will save your image as an AF file with all these adjustments. It won't alter your original RAW file that you used. So you can go in and do it again if you want, but it will save this as an AF file. And we choose where it's going to go. It's going to go in Street Trader with the same name. So if it goes. And that's our image edited and saved. So I think that's enough for now. Thank you for watching. If you've got any more questions, please feel free to contact me.